Thank you, John. Well, good evening and welcome members, officers and those members of the public here at the meeting and those that are joining us virtually. Just before the meeting kicks off, can I just introduce Gordon Bryant at the back? If you could stand up, Gordon. Gordon is replacing David Hayes, our finance manager and section 151 officer. So welcome. I hope you enjoy your time. Or do your input at our various meetings. Okay, item 1, apologies for absence, Sandra.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Gubb, Councillor Ford, Councillor Dart, Councillor Whitaker, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Pennington said he may be late, and Stacey Laurie, Head of Legal.
Thank you. Okay, item 2 is to confirm the minutes of the last meeting of full council on the 19th of June, pages 5 to 17. Just run through the pages. And then we'll get them proposed in a second. So first one, page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Councillor Haynes?
My alarm's raised. Sorry, coming out with minutes.
Well, it's just for accuracy at the moment.
Could you give me an opportunity in a minute to do that?
Yeah, possibly then. Okay. So on page 13, page 14, 15, 16, and 17. So what I'm looking for is a proposal that are true. Councillor Lott, you proposing that?
That are correct, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Hackett? Second. That's been proposed and seconded. Show of hands, all in favour, please. Against? Any abstentions?
27 for and 2 again. 2 abstentions.
Yeah. Okay, moving on, item 3, public contributions. Councillor Haynes.
Oh, it's on page 12.
Yes.
The renewable, the energy report from the finance officer. And there were some questions raised about the renewable energy elements as part of our energy supply. We were quite rushed through a decision about this, but I'd be grateful maybe if our new finance manager could possibly maybe come to the climate working group and to discuss or maybe increasing the renewable energy element of our tariff, given that we declared a climate emergency.
Yeah, sure. Let me take the consideration. Item 3, public contributions. So I understand we've got James Jackson speaking on the future of Bedford's old library. Jackson, you'd like to come up to the front here and speak into the microphone, and we can all be raised hands. I know it sounds a bit of a rush, but you've got 3 minutes when the family starts speaking.
This with stopwatch. So,
well done.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. All the councillors have had an email from me giving an idea of the proposal. That is to have the old Bideford Library building, which was a gift to the town by the Carnegie Foundation in 1900 or thereabouts, and in parallel, a chance to save a very large collection of art books. Together, these have the potential to create a unique cultural resource and provide a boost to the town at the same time. Firstly, I must ask you to consider, is this a worthwhile project? I propose that this project, if it's acceptable, be achieved at no cost to Torridge District Council due to external funding. The other extra questions which must be answered are: one, what would the cost be to Torridge District Council if we wish to get this building into shape to consider it as a rental proposition? Two, who would take it as an unrepaired site on a rent and repair basis, whilst there are numerous less complicated options available? Three, what are the costs and social implications of living empty? Four, you must also ask what qualifications and experience I have to bring this project to a satisfactory conclusion. Firstly, I hold a diploma from the Chartered Institute of Building in Building Maintenance Management, and also that I've worked as a general manager in the industry. And secondly, in 2011, I was tasked with restoring or refurbishing Appledore Library, which was then on the verge of closure by Devon County Council, and is now considered one of the nicest small libraries in the county and probably in the whole of the south. Furthermore, I have exchanged letters with the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, and have passed these and consulted with Torr and Torridge Voluntary Services in assembling bids to achieve the funding from various institutions. I've also been promised ongoing managerial support from a number of directions. And although I've only been working on this project for about 2 or 3 weeks, I've covered a lot of ground and got a lot of verbal and written support. I've spoken with John Hart, who, as you probably know, is the leader of Devon County Council, and he likes the project, but would only go into writing on the matter if he felt that he wasn't upsetting Torridge District Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson, for that.
Thank you.
Then moving on to item 4 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Members, you all know the score there. If you have an interest in prepare on your agenda item comes up, please describe the nature at the appropriate time. Item 5, agenda agreement of agenda items 1 and 2, the Arnold Part 2 items this evening. So item 6 is to consider correspondence on the business book for by the direction of the chair. I have none. Do you have none either?
Nothing, Chair.
Okay, agenda item 7 is the joint protocol for dealing with unauthorised encampments, pages 18 to 44 of your pack. The Chief Exec is going to present.
Thanks, Chair. Right, so this is a short report. We've got inspectors here from Devon Cornwall Police who sat in the audience there. If there are any particular questions in relation to the police side of the protocol. We were due to report this at the last full council meeting, but due to the number of items on the agenda that we did, it was deferred until tonight. So what we're looking at here is the working arrangements, the protocol and the principles that would operate between the district council and the police should there be any unauthorised encampment on Torridge District Council land. So we're only talking about the protocol in relation to the district council's land. It's somewhat restricted in terms of what we were able to do, principally because the council doesn't have a transit site or a tolerated trespass site. So in terms of powers of the district council, powers of the police, they are somewhat restricted than they might otherwise be. This report isn't about looking at any sites of future, that's for a future discussion, and that principally will come out of any future review of our joint local plan, and therefore considered by the Joint Planning Policy Committee. Chair, I haven't got anything else to add. The papers there for discussion and or agreement. So the recommendation is to approve the joint protocol between the District Council and Devon and Cornwall Police.
You see? Any urgent questions? Councillor Hudson, do you want your hand up first?
Thank you. I'm prepared to propose that we accept the recommendation of this report, but perhaps I'm preempting any questions that might want to be asked. But I do commend this report to you. It makes a formal agreement. It actually, the protocol itemizes exactly whose responsibility, what powers both the district council have, what powers the police have to act. And so it is clear for all of us to understand that we're not sitting on our hands, not doing anything, but there are processes that we follow. And I think this will help when and if we have an encampment again. But it actually firms up the agreement between us and the police, and several other districts are actually already part of this protocol. So I commend it to you and I heartily support it.
Sorry, Councillor Christie, you want to speak first?
Yeah, yes, it's a very full report. Can I ask one thing? On page 24, section 1.9, police powers will only be used when the encampment is having a significant impact, such as depriving a community of local amenities. Clearly, the Travellers in Bideford did that because Victoria Park is a local amenity. But then I see at 110, it says it will be for the police to determine what constitutes a significant impact. Do we know who in the police force actually decides this?
If you're happy,
Or do you use? I'm the lead.
Try not to throw myself over the Yeah, it's a very valid question, isn't it? What I would say, just to highlight a couple of points should be made, is it's a South West of Devon-wide agreement, so that will bring some consistency, but also because others are adopting it, there'll be learning and review, so we can watch how it works in other areas and apply that to us. Hopefully the yearly review to tweak it. It's significant impact is a phrase, and it goes on in the appendix to give different scenarios. I can try and get close to that better. So in the appendices, it does give some sort of circumstances or conditions, and it does mention the amenity, right, but it does need to be that significant impact. So I think what we had is most of the encampment on the coach park and areas with some of it then on the fringes of the football pitch, but that to me is not significant. Put that in perspective, I'm not saying it hasn't had an impact, I'm just saying for that level of significant impact compared to the police, but these powers have been invoked previously. We recall had the incident where we had a large group go down the A30, block the road, leave vehicles abandoned in the road, go on to cause serious disruption, serious crime at a number of service stations. That was a significant impact. What we had to measure is not just the fact that they're on the fringes of an amenity, but also the level of crime that's reported. And there was a disparity between what was reported online and what we saw on social media, and reports that came through to us, which were very different. So there was a bit of room where there was some fact in all sides, but on the basis of the police side of it, I had two crimes, recorded crimes, which were directly applicable to the group. One was the theft of some belongings from a park bench, which were recovered, and the other was an incident at a service station. So on a police basis, that's not a significant impact. For me, it's for the inspector to make that decision, which was myself, but there's a protocol in there so that if there is a disagreement and you as a council think that it is a significant impact, then we can escalate that between ourselves and we go to Toby, obviously, and Steve, then to have that discussion. Question? Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
I'll just hold here in case there's any other police.
Sorry, Councillor Goff, just
yeah, mine's a more general question, really. I mean, lots of parish councils own public playing spaces and car parks. How do they report it? Do they report to Torrid or do they report straight to the police?
It's a responsibility of the parish or town council, the same as parish has its responsibility, the owner of the land. So if Orrington Town Council owns land, it'll be their responsibility. So same for any parish council. We have powers for our own land, not for anybody else's land.
So we go straight to the police.
Yeah, to say it's a similar thing applies.
It would be a similar process, so you need to seek the usual powers through the courts as a parish council, so seeking to apply to the magistrates' courts to enact those powers that you have to for people trespassing on your land, and then you would pursue those powers like Torridge did in this case, at the same time as we continually monitor and discuss whether it's appropriate to use police powers. And I'd add to that, you've got it's one thing to say the police have a power. The second is looking at the logistics of actually doing that. You know, we've got some very young families, some very young children. By seizing, a caravan, we've removed somebody's home. Those children then need to be housed. That's the responsibility, obviously, which we have. So it's they're quite significant powers to enact, and the consequences of enacting them are also very impactful on all parties, not just the police. So it's keeping that balance.
Chair, please, just
hang on a second. Councillor Tom, showed your hand up.
Yeah, I was just following up on your statement. There are only a couple of reports of crimes to you. I wonder if that's partly because a lot of the public don't bother reporting crimes because they don't think they're going to get the action. I was in touch with the commercial manager of the Burton about her actual experiences of what happened. Her response to me talked about what happened, said the police have been useless. I contacted them through 101 on Ryan Saturday afternoon, but I've had no response, even though I provided a mobile number for when the building was closed. We had an incident again today, I think it was the Monday, so I called 101. I was told to attend from the queue. If you have any more trouble whilst on the phone, please hang up and call 999. Therefore, 999 was called just before 3 p.m. as youth were running around the building, swearing at customers and attempting to set off the fire alarm. They did not attend. I locked and left the building at 4:30 p.m. having had no contact with police. I left the car park, a patrol car drove past Burton heading towards the key but did not stop. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff on social media and people say, oh, but we haven't had official reports. That might be why.
I agree that there's two things at play. There's an apathy in reporting and there's some issues with our 101 system and online reporting.
And 999.
And potentially 999. Now I'm not going to pretend that there are not issues with the contact centre. Things have improved, they have got better, they put a lot more resource for it, but I get the fact it's incredibly frustrating, but also from my level, I cannot act on information that I don't know how. I can't even monitor a social media site, such as a local Facebook page, unless I've got specific reason for going in to look at a specific item of evidence. I need to apply for an authority to do that. So I can't even scrutinise, social media to see if a report might or might not come in until it's come to our notice by other means. So as frustrating as it is, I can only act on the information that's being reported to us. We have got the Torridge email address as well, which is online. So if you go online, type in your neighbourhood, it will bring up the contact details for the local team here in Bideford and our local email inbox. Now, obviously, if it's a crime in progress, don't report it. But if you've reported something online and you want to make my team aware of it, then you can use that online facility to contact us.
But if people dial 999, don't get a response. Wonder how many people have actually taken the trouble, then report it in some form online.
And I agree, and that's where the apathy's in. But unfortunately, these spheres of influence, I can't fix the 999 system, control them. I ideally wish it worked better.
So very briefly, following up on your earlier point, if that's the case, should the protocol not actually include not only the district and city authorities, but shouldn't it cover all local authorities, including the town councils and the parish councils? At the moment, this seems to be specific just to the higher level district, etc. A huge amount of land is publicly owned land in this district is not in Bideford or Northern.
Steve probably stop me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the first time we've got a protocol agreed on a Devonshire basis. So I think the hope would be that that can be worked out. Unfortunately, it's not an if we get an authorised encampment again. It's a when it will happen. So it will get put to the test. We learn from other areas, and I'd hope that then seek to expand that and become agreed with the towns and the parishes. What I would hope would work, as we all work together, is if you had an unauthorised encampment on a rugby pitch over by the parish, that you could be guided through that legal process by district with support of the police, and we work collectively together to apply the terms and principles of that protocol, because the same mandate and powers are available. You just might not have the same ready access to the legal support and structure of going through that process, which maybe Steve has no experience of.
It was something that the deputy leader and myself and other members of the SMT were talking about. And really, when you go back to your parish and town councils, you need to make them aware of their responsibilities. And, as Betsy said, we can offer support, but the likelihood is it tends to be centered around a Bideford's location, predominantly anyway.
Thank you, Grant. Any other speakers? Councillor Lavelle, I think, first of all, was it?
It's great. Sorry, it's great that you're putting a protocol in place for unauthorised encampments, but surely should not some more urgency be attached to actually finding a legal site, so that this protocol would be a very secondary thing that would be happening, and we'd have legal powers to more legal powers. I mean, just to mention that we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. So the next meeting is going to be the next meeting. Why not? Why not now? Why is there more urgency attached when obviously it upsets huge numbers of the public? I know Peter Christian suggested that the site along this link road that is closed that has the water thing in, and I appreciate that is actually a North Devon thing, not ours, and therefore some negotiation may be looked to be done about that. But surely the urgency, the thing, these people need somewhere to be able to camp, without annoying everybody, upsetting everybody. Surely that is the most urgent thing that we should address sooner rather than later.
Sorry, Councillor Branton.
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to ask. So I presume that you've just said that there's likely to be further encampments, and I tend to agree with you that the policy that you used this time of gentle persuasion, I don't know what you'd call it, because obviously a significant nuisance is open to terrible interpretation. It sounds like the woman in the Burton. I didn't see it as anything but a really serious threat and intimidating behaviour. So I suggest that there's some kind of negotiating officer who can actually study how you deal with this sort of unauthorised behaviour. And I totally agree with the approach, because there were young children there. I mean, we saw that when we went down. They were napping on the line and that sort of thing. Definitely were very young children there, as well as these youths. But I do think that we need to have some kind of negotiating process with these the travellers, so that we can straight away have a liaison with them to persuade those who aren't called in a crime, which you didn't think they were, but others did, so that we can encourage them to be there as short a time as possible and to obey as many decent social regulations as we'd like everybody else to do.
Yeah. So the protocol based on working practice. And
sorry, I'm going to just say that I do know that in the last council, Forest couldn't agree. They couldn't agree on a site. It was up for debate at the last council, and they couldn't agree on a site. And of course, if they had, none of this would have been necessary.
Sorry, yeah. So the protocol, as portrayed in this document, was very much what was followed, in essence, by both the district council and the police. So it's those individuals arrived, we went down and met them. We visited them jointly to ascertain where they come from, their intentions and how long they're going to stay, what they're going to do, see if they're going to engage. Now, different groups, they're factions within factions, different groups engage in different ways. Actually, this group engaged quite positively with us from the adult perspective. Some immediate requests were laid down about, being in the proximity to the nurseries, dogs not being kept on leads. But in fairness, when we've gone down and then revisited, dogs were then tied up, vehicles have been moved. So it's a constant case of engagement, because if you get that engagement wrong, then actually you can trigger behaviours which are far more impacted on the community. It's very easy for them to just not engage at all and not assist with that process. So in this case, it was a matter of assessing that, working together, and whilst they did seem to be following our directive, they're using the bins which were provided, they're starting to clean things up. It's not ideal, and I get the fact that people don't want it, but it will happen. And we do have sat in the background our diverse community team who give a lot of advice on this, who engage regularly with those groups. And every time one of these incidents is created, it's very carefully recorded by ourselves in decision making, and we engage with about diverse communities, sergeant and staff, who can direct us about what they know about the group, they've dealt with them before, and the best way to engage with them. So that's very much what effectively we do on every occasion. But this is just getting it out there so there's no confusion about how long these things take and what powers each side have and what order they should take.
Thank you. Councillor Leather, and Councillor Leather will be the last speaker on this item. We've got a large agenda.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I did take the trouble to read all 25 pages of this protocol at home. It's a very wordy document. There's far too much words in there for my liking. I will be supporting it, but I'll pick up what Councillor Newton said, why it didn't include parish and town councils. It should have done, and that's an omission. But what I wanted to ask was, at the top of page 31, it does speak of the local authority, their powers, that they can give a direction, and I always understood this to be the case, direction to leave the land, and that it is an offence to fail to comply with such a direction. Now, my question is, and Steve will answer this, I hope, did we issue a direction for them to leave the land? All I saw us councillors were told, to go to the magistrates court. It's up to the magistrates court when they hear any application. Well, that's all I was told. That's all councillors were told. There may have been exaggeration on social media. I don't use social media, so I wouldn't know. But to hear what's just been reported about the issues in the Burton, and to see that the fair actually upsticked and left the park because of the issues that they obviously must have been experiencing. They came back later on. So my question is, did we issue that direction for them to leave the land or not?
There's direction issued on the Monday following their arrival. They arrived on Tuesday afternoon. As Inspector Sear mentioned, we have to go through a process. So housing officers, property team have to meet and liaise with them. Clearly, if we had a tolerated trespass site, then you can start that process much sooner and much quicker, because you've identified somewhere where the council's willing to tolerate them to settle for a period of time. In the absence of that, as I said earlier, the powers are much more limited, and then we're reliant, if the case may be, on excessive antisocial behaviour to start that early process, which clearly, as we heard tonight, wasn't the case. So that process was then started. I think an email went round to all councillors on the Monday, and I think the notice was served on the Monday, as far as I recall. And we've had a court date for Wednesday. So equally, you can start the process. We're still reliant on court, and obviously, when you go to the court, you've got to have evidence and reason to ask travellers to move from an unauthorised place. So if you've got somewhere to move them to, that obviously helps. As Councillor Brenton mentioned earlier in response to Councillor Lavelle, a number of sites have been brought forward over the past couple of years, and none have been approved thus far.
Just briefly, but it does say once that direction's issued, then it's an offence to fail to comply with it. Talking about evidence for why you want them to be neither here nor there. If they're given this direction, that's it, and they don't leave, it's illegal then.
Once you get that through the court process, so had the travellers not moved by the Wednesday, assuming the courts had granted the notice, then that would become an offence at that point.
That's not what it says here.
Well, thank you very much. So it's been proposed by Councillor Hudson, I believe. The second for it, please. Then you can second it. So a show of hands, all in support of the document, yes. Against? The abstentions?
Didn't hear the floor, you would chair, just to say that Councillor Gibson arrived late, so then I'll take it as an abstention. We won't take the debate. Yes,
thank you. Thank you very much. You're more than welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting. If you wish to go. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you,
Chair, that was 28 for and 3 abstentions.
Thank you very much, Tom. But then moving on to item 8, appointment of members to working groups, pages 45 to 46 on your agenda. Chief Executive is going to read the report.
Thanks, Chair. Hopefully a bit more straightforward. So this is to appoint an additional member to the Harbour Board, increasing the number of members on the Harbour Board and appointing a further member, I believe, the leaders.
Thank you, Chair. I will hold my hand up and say I got it slightly wrong at the last meeting. I'd asked Councillor Brenton to do it, and I had 2 last-minute additions put to me, and I was dealing with the last-minute additions, and I did forget Councillor Brenton. I don't know how I managed to forget Councillor Brenton. Obviously I did. So I'd like to move the recommendation. We up the number to 6, and the second recommendation, as I recommended, David, Councillor Brenton does join the Harbour Board Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Seconder. Councillor Hicks, will you second, right? All in favour, please show. Any against?
30 Chair, could I say vis-a-vis this report, it does say 3 working groups. Actually, at the last full council meeting, we decided to set up the water working group, parties group actually, and it's not on that list, so it is a policy now with the council, so I presume it will be there at some stage.
Yeah, that was a task and finish group rather than a working group within the constitution. So that's why it's not set up in such.
It's all in the words, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Moving on then to item 9, the strategic plan update, which is pages 47 to 53 on your agenda. And once again, Chief Executive, ably assisted by the leader, Councillor James, will present the report.
Thanks, Chair. So I'm sure the leader will have some points to make in a second. So this is now all members have been appointed to different committees, lead member roles, etc., etc. It's timely that we start considering your vision, your strategic plan of what you want to deliver, what you want to achieve over the next 4 years during your term of office. It's, it is timely. So we've got a session, a workshop scheduled for Monday, the 14th of August. I know that the leaders emails all members with the dates and details around that, including a short survey. So we've had 8 responses so far. So can we have the other 28, please? We still wanted to chase up responses to acceptance or not of attending the workshop on the 14th. It's important that we have clarity of how many members are going to turn up, if for nothing else, that we don't waste any food on the lunch. But clearly we want as many members there as possible. I understand it's August and people will be possibly on holidays or away, but clearly it's a really, really important item and a really important session. So the report sets out this kind of brief timetable on page 48, with tonight being the launch, Monday the 14th being your workshop, where we want you to engage and give us that vision, direction. Moving on to a full council meeting in mid-September, toward the beginning of October, where we'll collate all the information you've provided us with, so that we can prepare reports to go out to consultation so our stakeholders, communities, residents, town and parish councils can give their views on the things you want to be seen in your strategic plan for the coming years. Then with a view of running a consultation for a 6-week period up until the end of November, and bringing all of that information back before you before the end of the calendar year on your full council meeting the 11th of December. That will enable then your officer team to start developing business cases for each of the services between that point and up to the end of the financial year, March 24. And clearly then that will evolve into a quarterly business report, which is reported on a quarterly basis to internal overview and scrutiny. I've highlighted in the report the 2020 themes of the vision. So local economy, communities, health and housing, our environment, our future and our council. So we're asking, are they the right things? Are they other things or other themes you want to add? I think it's only right to point out we already have a work programme carried over from the last council with some significant projects in. So the development of a new environment centre, the Appledore Clean Maritime Innovation Centre, delivering all the funding through the shared prosperity schemes. And depending on tonight's decision later on, development and implementation of some housing and modular units to deal with our temporary accommodation and homeless issues. I've highlighted some of the more strategic things that the council are aware of and things you may need to consider as part of your drawing up your vision. So I'm sure you're all aware of the opportunities around floating offshore wind, X-links, so those clean energy type projects, devolution, the potential opportunities that might give this council, along with the other districts and unitaries within Devon. And finally, as we picked up during the induction, we've been highlighted as a council for a levelling up partnership. We don't know the full details of that yet, other than there's 400 million across the country for 20 such councils. We've been identified because of our percentage of adults with level 3+ qualifications, our GVA per hour worked, median gross weekly pay and health life expectancy. That's not to say they're good metrics. The metrics are that we need levelling up. So they're the kinds of things you need to be thinking of as we develop our strategic plan. It'd be remiss of me not to mention funding, as we've talked about local government and budget, local government funding, finance and budgets. So that's obviously one of the barriers potentially. Looking at the duration of the strategic plan, we've historically had that on a 4-year basis, so run for every term of office. Because of the length of some of these strategic projects, it's proposed we have a longer term plan, 5 years, that's updated on a rolling basis. So Chair, I'll hand over to the leader who may wish to add anything.
Thank you, Chief Exec. Thank you, Chair. I don't want to muddle it, trying to explain it. It's all very clear in the report. A couple of things I'd like to highlight is this is your strategic plan, and that it can only happen if you're there on the day. And obviously we need to know numbers, and also it'd be nice to have a much better return on the survey that's attached to it. And in some ways, you know, this is quite exciting because not only have we got the big schemes that we're already doing, the Marine Centre, and there's an awful lot going on with that, and the Environmental Centre, and we were joking earlier, we're not sure which plan we're on at the moment with the Environmental Centre. Hopefully we're on the final plan. And also the Levelling Up Fund, and as Chief Exec said, it's a double-edged sword. We're getting the money because we're a deprived area. That's nothing to be particularly proud of, because why are we a deprived area? And that's down to us as members to drive it forward. And we're responsible to our communities. We should be making sure that we're not a deprived area. So we've got the opportunity. I don't want to go into all the details. I think when we come to doing it on the day, I think we can explain much more, and it will be more relevant when we actually come in to explain that. But I have said to those who said they can't come, I think if you look at the timetable in particular, we need to have something that can go to the ministry at the end of March. This is what we're being told, or to the Levelling Up Department. We're also getting some advice that probably it'd be better to be aiming for the end of the year. So we've moved forward the September meeting into August, and then you can see the layout that we just about get it in for the end of the year and able to get work prepared for March. We would look somewhat silly if we don't get this moving and we don't get a chance to get that money. And not only that, we would be letting down our communities, and I'm not prepared to see that happen. So we will do that. What I will say, those who can't make the date, there will be follow-up reports and a chance for people to add their views to that report. So it will be all 36, I hope. Those who've been on the council as long as they have will remember we used to have these meetings, and then when it went to full council for adoption, some would stand up and say, well, I wasn't there on that day, I don't approve of it. I would much prefer we deal with it on the day, and we get the input. There will be some that can't, and I accept that as well. So I would like to just keep it simple and propose the recommendations. We note the report and the timetable, which I feel is really important. And we do look at how our strategic plan has got some longevity, because some of these plans will go way before the 4 years and way beyond the 5 years. But we need to plan for this community what we're going to deliver. And this is, to me, it's a serious, but it's a golden opportunity. So I would plead with people to come, let us know about the life, answer the questionnaire, and let's show our community that we're serious about delivering something to improve this awful report, really, in some ways, that we qualify for that because of deprivation. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Christie wishes to support that, second that motion. And he also wishes to speak, but we've got Councillor Thomas in his hand up first.
Just on the current work programme, this is the Environment Centre. I've spoken to Richard Haston, I've seen the plans, and what appears to be planned at the moment is offices, workshops, and parking for all the waste and refuse vehicles. I think calling it an environment centre smacks a little bit of greenwashing. It's not an environment centre, it's a depot.
Here, here.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. It started out as an environmental centre, clearly, what it says on the plans in Richard's office. For the steel, so it's obviously, I think for a number of reasons, financial being only one of them, it's now been scaled back to more as what you've just described. So perhaps that needs to be looked at in future. Yeah.
Right, can I just reply to that? I would agree with you. It did start out as an environmental centre because we wanted to deal with recycling. Recycling is a really up and down business. We're getting quite a good deal through Coastal, who's just spent an awful lot of money in Exeter and are keen to take our recycling. We were getting to the stage where we couldn't deliver anything. The wish list had just got so big, it was going to be all or nothing. So we have pared it back a little bit. And the reason we've pared it back is, part of the reason is, two reasons really, is one, as far as Middle Dock is concerned, which is the main base for the lorries, we need for the environment, for the Marine Innovation Centre, and we need to get on with that, otherwise we'd be losing that money. And the other one is the workshops are up at, and I always get the place wrong, but anyway, where the workshops are, is Victorian building. It is awful conditions for our staff to be working in this day and age. So we needed to look at the budget, we needed to look what we must get on and provide. And as I say, with the recycling, economically, probably at the moment, it's better to do a deal with Coastal. However, there is land there that we could look at should more funding become available. But we couldn't deliver the whole package. You know, I won't go into the figures, but it was getting almost ridiculous. And we've come back to what we budgeted for in the first place. So we can crack on with the Marine Centre, we can get our men into better conditions, and it should be a win-win. And we've spent years on it. Councillor Brenton and the others would know, we have gone round and round looking for sites. We've just about secured the site, and it will deliver what we need at this moment. What we do in the future will again depend on funding. So I hope that answers you and helps you.
Thank you, Ken. Councillor Christian?
Yes, I'd like to second that. A couple of things I would add. On page 49, you briefly mentioned the opportunities for consideration. The floating offshore wind. This is in my paper today, something I hadn't heard of. Apparently, Mark Drakeford, the First Minister of Wales, and Linda Taylor, the leader of Cornwall, are signing an agreement about the Celtic offshore wind. We seem to be, there's no mention of Torridge at all, it's just Cornwall and Wales, which is slightly worrying. The second point, X-Links, when I turned up to the presentation here, our economic officers, well, the North Devon and the Torridge one, they already seem to have embraced this from what I saw, but it's all good stuff. The third one, devolution. Can we have an updated report when we have this meeting in a fortnight? Because I read on social media, the opposition at County Hall and various other places, devolution is a dead duck. I'll be interested to hear about it. No need to discuss it now. I'm just asking for a report up to date when we get to it. One other thing I will say about the Levelling Up Fund, our mayor in Bideford assures us that Geoffrey Cox is going to attend our council meeting and wants to talk about levelling up. I don't know if any other councillors want to come and hear him, but I'm not sure when it's going to be, but we're assured that he's coming.
Well, it's Thursday. Thursday.
Coming on Thursday? That's my understanding. Right, not on the agenda.
Well, that's my understanding. He's coming on Thursday. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, it's been proposed and it's been seconded. Can I have a show of hands will support it?
Unanimous, Chair.
Very much. Thank you, Steve. And then moving on to item 10 on your agenda, updating the North Devon and Torridge local plan. And we received a report from the planning manager, Alan Smith. And Ian Rollins. It's all written down on my sheet.
Good evening, members. And thank you, Chair. So the report is item 10, and that's pages 54 to 61 of your agenda. And you'll see the purpose of the report is set out to consider the approach to undertaking an update the North Devon and Torridge local plan. Just briefly a bit of background, and indeed much of the background is set out in your report, and also I think most of you attended the recent local plan workshop briefings, which went into some more detail about where we've been, the journey we've been on over the past, certainly the past sort of 18 months to 2 years. So we're not going to go over that in detail. The local plan was adopted in October 2018, as most of you will know. In December of 2020, the full councils of both Torridge and North Devon councils resolved to move forward with a comprehensive review of the joint local plan. Main reasons for this were due to a change in context at the time, changes to local priorities, the impact of COVID and the housing crisis, and also the importance of the climate and ecological emergency. So they were some of the driving forces at that time for embarking on a comprehensive review. The commencement of that comprehensive review was initially delayed, again due to a hiatus around the COVID pandemic. Work started sort of in earnest in summer 2021. This was early evidence gathering, confirmation of governance arrangements, and also just general project planning. The first meeting of the newly formed Joint Planning Policy Committee took place in early 2022. Now, as most members will be aware, the role of the Joint Planning Policy Committee is essentially delegated authority for pretty much all local plan matters, with the exception of approving or not formal adoption of the new plans. That will always come back to full council. Formal programme was agreed, a local development scheme, and the People and Place project and branding was established, followed by a soft launch in March 2022. I'll just hand over to Ian, who will just sort of summarise what happened after that. Briefly.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. Yeah, so in the summer of 2022, officers were tasked with reflecting on the approach to updating the local plan and whether or not a comprehensive update remained to be the most necessary and appropriate. Now, in particular, this came around from considering the local government finance situation and the more challenging perspective on that aspect of it, and also emerging national planning reforms that were somewhat uncertain at that point in time. In the second half of 2022, in response to that, we carried out an extensive programme of work to understand the performance of the existing plan and the potential consequences of the context and the way of updating it. We carried out technical appraisal of the plan using Planning Advisory Service Plan Review Toolkit. We had a programme of engagement with yourselves as elected members, and we engaged with external professional support through Planning Advisory Service as a critical friend. Now, the outcome of that work was that, broadly speaking, the plan was up to date and fit for purpose, and a few aspects of it were out of conformity with national planning policy, but that they could generally be managed through our development management processes. Now, there was some uncertainty about national planning reforms remaining at that point in time, and there was uncertainty about how we demonstrated our 5-year housing land supply or not. However, there was clearly aspects of the plan were no longer aligned with member aspirations as well, and that was a key driver for reflecting on the plan. The Joint Planning Policy Committee resolved in January 2023 to recommend to move to a targeted partial update of the local plan and to recommend that to each of the 3 councils at North Devon and Torridge. And the detailed recommendations put forward at that point are provided in Appendix 1 to your report on page 61 of your agenda, and it is worth being mindful of those. Full Council at North Devon resolved to follow the JPPC recommendations at the end of January 2023 and move to that partial update. Full Council at Torridge considered a comparable report, but resolved to defer that decision and seek further information from Joint Planning Policy Committee on the potential scope of that partial update. That was referred back to Joint Planning Policy Committee, who met in March 2023. The outcomes of that was are set out at paragraph 2.7 of your report on page 55 of the agenda. And it identified a narrow scope of what could be achieved through partial updates. The main aspects being First Homes, which is a housing product from the government, which is not covered in our existing local plan. It was introduced after that. The potential for introducing some small sites for additional housing through allocations to help some of our small, medium enterprise local builders. That was something that was identified as a potential issue and something that members would like to follow. Reviewing our tourism policies around attractions and accommodation and seeing what we could do with those to make it more enabling. Our rural economy policy, coastal change and fluvial change management areas, work we had ongoing. Sites for travellers, very topical this evening. And some climate change considerations such as onshore wind. We're looking at targeted policy changes and guidance. But we would not be able to look to fundamentally alter any strategies or fundamentally alter any approaches to any of those types of matters. And we would end up with the same base dates for 2031 with our plan. So the full council recommendation sought for a report to be returned in April of this year. We were unable to do that because of the emerging and upcoming local elections. And subsequent meetings of this full council have full agendas focused on establishing the council's governance around lead members, etc. So it's not been possible to bring a report until today. I'll hand it back to Helen at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. So just to conclude, the report before you as full council today is seeking members' guidance and direction for officers to take with regard to an update to the local plan. It is worth reflecting on the current context. Circumstances have changed again since this matter was previously considered. We have a new council. You as a council may have your own aspirations, and you just on the previous item had a briefing on your strategic planning day and specifically some key projects that are coming forward, emerging and potentially transformational opportunities. There are the 4 North Devon and Horwich districts at the moment, and these are set out in paragraphs 2.10 to 2.12 of the report, and they're consistent with some of the ones raised by Steve, most notably Middle Dock, the Levelling Up Partnership, floating offshore wind, X-links, and more widely green economy, and associated supply chain opportunities. The existing local plan, I think it's important to note that there is potentially support for those projects, but I think it's for members to consider whether as a council you wish to be proactive or reactive to those opportunities as they come forward. There are still a range of uncertainties. The 5-year housing land supply, the position with that was confirmed at the end of April, that both councils consider that they can demonstrate a housing land supply. However, this is currently being challenged through a planning appeal, which has been going on within North Devon District. That could have an impact on the status of the local plan. And national planning reforms, a consultation commenced last week on a whole raft of proposed changes. It's still somewhat unknown in terms of scope and timings of those. Plan making and the approach to plan making does form part of that consultation, which is running until the 18th of October, and officers will be going through all of those in detail, still reviewing at the moment the consequences of that consultation, where it may end up. So to conclude, there's not a clear black and white or binary option for you all. Hence it's an open recommendation to you, for you as members to determine what you consider to be the most appropriate approach to updating the local plan. There is the recommendation from JPPC, which is, as Ian said, set out in Appendix 1 of this agenda item, and that is to move to a targeted partial update as per the scope set out in the report. There's an opportunity to carry out a comprehensive update and effectively prepare a new local plan, or alternatively, it's open to members to resolve something different still. The recommendation is set out in paragraph 5.1 of your report, and whatever is resolved or determined this evening will go back to the next JPPC meeting, which will be the first meeting of the new councils. We do recognise it is a complex subject. happy to take any questions or offer any points of clarification. And I'd just like through the chair to hand across to the leader, who I believe would like to say a few words.
So I come up to the microphone so everybody.
Good idea, Gary. Right, my view is very simple. It's a new council, it's new opportunities. So why are we tinkering with a policy that started in 2008, was agreed in 2018. In 2019, we had a new council. We went to JPPC meetings and, well, we went to the working groups. There wasn't JPPC then. The idea of the JPPC was that rather than working group, keep coming back to full council with suggestions. I wasn't sold on that idea, because I think if you're doing something that everybody's responsible for, we have a responsibility to come back to all members. However, it was decided with others, JPP, Joint Planning Policy Committee. In 2019, we started to look at, as a working group, what was in the programme. And immediately, there was a lot of alarm bells ringing about how out of date it was, and yet we were just adopting it. So consequently, in 2020, both North Devon and us went to full council and said, we need a full review. Now, obviously, in between, we had COVID and everything else that came along, and it just sort of got, I wouldn't say on the back burner, but we couldn't deal with it. So we moved on a little bit. And now we're in a position where a partial review would have been possible probably last year. We are now getting very near to when we need to do a new local plan. And common sense to me, and I know most of you don't agree with my common sense, but it does indicate that if we've got to have a new plan by 2031, we've got a period of time to do it. Why are we spending time and resources on doing a partial review, which can't change strategic policy? We can only do adjustment to what we've already got. Whereas we really need to be looking at, does it supply the fundamentals of what we're doing? Now, the world's moved on rapidly in the last 2 to 3 years. The results of COVID, working from home, technology, and now we're into a position where we've just been talking about, we're a deprived area. So what are we going to do about it? Are we just going to look at the old plan and say we'll tinker with it? Or are we going to be a bit more brave, a bit more adventurous and say, what can we do with the local plan to deliver? Now, in the background, I'm sorry, we all come out muddled because that's how I work, is that we've got Devon Futures, that is North Devon, Forage and Petrock, looking at what we can do in terms of skills, employment and stuff like that in the area. And it is being suggested that some of that will not fit the existing plan. We need to look forward. We've now got the Levelling Up partnership, which has given us huge opportunities to go forward as an area. And what we should be saying is, what plan do we need to be able to deliver them? What we don't want to be doing is tinkering around the edges and then discovering we can't deliver what we want to do. So I've banged this drum. I'm not popular in some areas, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a new council, it's new opportunities. Let's just get our brains around what we can deliver for our community. And so my recommendation is that full council tonight vote that we go for a full review. I won't go into some of the details about financing. All I can say is, I think we're okay on that side. I won't go into staffing, and I think we're more than okay on that side. There may be issues in other areas, but on those, and I mean geographically other areas, not in areas within this council. So I would recommend that we vote tonight, we go for a full review, we refer it back to JPPC, and as I've said at several meetings recently, I expect members to turn up to JPPC meetings. The only reason we ended up with a partial one was because not all our members turned up, whereas North Devon, and I'll give them bonus points for doing it, made sure all 7 of theirs turned up and voted the way that they wanted to go. We had a little bit of a fiasco, is that not all of us turned up, one left early, and then because some of ours hadn't been to the pre-meetings, they weren't over sure what they were voting for.
that it's not going to happen this time, I can assure you. Is that we are really going to get this act together. We're a good council, we're going somewhere, we've got the funding to do it. So my plead to all of you is let's get on with a full review. We've got to do one anyway, so let's get on and do it and offer our community a future of what we can deliver with the funding available.
Thank you, Ken.
Right.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
Yeah, just one question to Ken before he leaves.
Just give him a second.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
He did say get a model.
I'll just come back a minute. As I said, it's all in my head. We are not looking at a review as such. It will be a full new local plan, and it will be your plan or our plan, whichever way you want to look at it. But it will be a full new plan. And the reason for that is we can't deal with some of the stuff in the old, even if we review it or tinker with it, it's my favourite phrase at the moment, is that we can't change strategic plans. We can only tinker around the edges. So we're going for a full new local plan, just to be absolutely clear. And I'll answer any other questions if they're mine.
Yeah, so what happens then if tonight Torridge agree to a full review and North Devon District Council will stick their heels in and only want to do a partial review? Do we go our separate ways? It will no longer be a joint plan.
I've had that discussion recently with the chief exec, and they're probably listening tonight to see what I've got to say. I've also had that discussion last Monday after the meeting we had in the town hall with the new leader of North Devon. I would say that he is amiable to our aims. What he does want is for me to go back to him and say, this is what we're doing, and this is going to be the advantages for North Devon. Because what we've got to imagine when we're doing all this funding and we're doing the one with North Devon and Petrock, Devon Futures, Northern Devon Futures, is that devolution is mentioned, and I'm quite happy to explain that to Councillor Christie. It's not quite as black as he's painted, but new members and new policies always muddy the water a little bit. But if we're going to succeed as Northern Devon, we have got to work together. And that is, whilst I'm giving North Devon a bit of a hard time, that has got to be our aim. Because when you look at the devolution, if you're looking at Torbay, Plymouth, County, that's where a lot of the money is. And in the voting system, that's where a lot of the clout is. So we need to be united with North Devon. And I'm hoping I can sell that to them. What I need is your support to show that we're all on board on this, on our side.
You haven't really answered my question. Right. If they don't agree, do we go alone?
We could do, but my aim is to ensure that we don't have to. Does that answer it? Well, let's just say negotiations are all about what we want and what they want. And in Devon Futures, there has been a slightly weakening conclusion that to propel Northern Devon Futures forward, we may need to do a new local plan. And I would say North Devon are involved in that side of it as well. On the other side, you know, from the Levelling Up partnership, whilst it's primarily aimed at Torridge, let's have no shadow that there will be overlapping. If we're successful, the other side of the river should be as well. And you know, if you look at Holland and Wolf, you look at the Marine Centre, this is all stuff that will drive the full area forward. So I've got to go back and convince them it's good for them as well as it's good for us. And if we have to do it on our own, yes, we will. Do we want to do it on our own?
That's what I need to do.
Yeah.
Councillor Harding.
I would like to second the proposal. I think we ought to lead North Devon into the future rather than follow them.
Yeah, I did see you, Councillor. Those two other hands up first. Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Chair. It's a simple question. This is a yes or no answer. Does abandoning the present local plan in any way affect the levelling up money that we're hoping to achieve in the near future?
No, we won't abandon the local plan. That will stay in place until we get the new one in place. So we will carry on where we are.
Having an inadequate local plan, and let's put it that way. Well, we have inadequate because we've already admitted that it needs some kind of renovation to it. But will that in any way adversely affect the levelling up money that we want to achieve?
No. What you've got to bear in mind, and you know from your experience, Councillor Brennan, is that we get policies thrown at us and money sometimes on a Friday night, and can you do it by Monday? So what we need to do is to build some resilience into the new local plan so we can deal with it. And we've already talked earlier about having a strategic, having a slightly longer programme. But we can do what we can do. I'm hoping that once we get into the new local plan, there will be material consideration. So as we develop the policies we want to do, that we can then look at how that new plan is developing, even if it's not adopted, we may be able to. I will be leaning on the officers that we may be able to use that as a material consideration if we need to. And I think it has to just be a positive approach. There will be problems. There always is. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Bright. Councillor Bright, local plan.
Can I ask, what's the timescale to actually get the new local plan finished so it's ready to actually enact on?
Well, technically, we can start it from next autumn, over November, but we believe that the officers need a lead-in time to that. And then from that date on, we've only got 13 months to complete it. Whereas if you think of the last one, it took 10 years and a few days extra over the 10 years. But this one, quite a tight time scale, because it comes back to this argument, is it would be lovely to be updated yearly, but you can't do that, because the world is changing so quickly. You know, we never thought we'd have COVID. We never thought we'd be working from home and all those sort of things. So if we can get it, our officers, and give them credit of giving them time. Don't put them under pressure to do something that's not going to benefit us. Really work on where we want to be next autumn when we start delivering the new local plan in a form, a working form, so that we've then got 30 months to actually deliver it. You know, and that brings us up to, I used to be very good at maths, so I think I'll go in. That brings us up to about 27. And then, you know, we've got a new plan in 31 anyway. So let's be in front of the game, not get to 30, 31 and think, what are we going to do? We're still working on a plan we started on in 2008. So that is roughly it. It's officially the start date is in the autumn. We want to start gathering information now, and then we've got 30 months to deliver it. I think that's about it.
Yeah,
I'm only working for the officers work.
Yeah. There is the consultation that's running.
Well, that's the consultation.
You know, we have to respond to that.
Yeah.
So basically, if we don't accept it now, in 3 years, we're going to have to start the process regardless, because else we're going to have a gap without a local.
Exactly.
Yeah. There will be a need to update and prepare a new local plan in the medium term in any case, at the very least.
And we can't have officers doing two at the same time. I wouldn't have them doing two at the same time. I'm not sure they would want them doing two at the same time. Thank you, Ken, and that'll explain it. Can I escape now, please? Thank you. Two speakers aside, Councillor, Councillor, you first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, but I've never ever over the last months wondered why we were even considering doing a partial review of the plan. The current local plan is broadly, well, it is in conformity with the NPPF in most respects. Why we ever decided that we might do a partial review was beyond me. I never supported that view. I do agree that a joint plan with North Devon is what we should be doing, because I think it's been very successful, and there's a lot of overlap between Horwich and North Devon, very similar issues. So I would hope a joint plan, a new joint plan, will receive the support of North Devon Council. But those of us on the plans committee over the last 4 years and currently, I think probably Councillor Locke will agree, on occasions, and the officers as well, we've really struggled in some respects with certain aspects of some of the policy. And this is why we do need a new plan now. Things change, things have changed a great deal over the last 4 or 5 years. So we do need a new plan, and it just does not make sense to spend thousands of pounds tinkering around the edges of some of the policies when you can't alter the strategic ones. Why do that? Put that money into starting now the work that will lead to us having a new plan. And let's be able again. And I'm sure that North Devon Council will come on board. I really hope they do. We've got the officers here who can do it. We're very lucky with our planning office and the officers we've got. I mean, they've just won that, well, M7, for me, they won that REBA in the Southwest. So let's vote tonight to get on with a new plan. Thank you.
Councillor Paladin.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up and slightly different from Councillor Leather, I've spoken to somebody in North Devon today, actually, at Wolseley Show, which is interesting that somebody would come from North Devon to Wolseley Show. Obviously, something Torres of Scotland, North Devon hasn't. But the case to me is that North Devon has 98,000 people and Torres has 68,000 people. And the joint plan is 7 members from each side. And having been the substitute for the last 6 months of the last council because people weren't turning up and being pretty well stitched up by North Devon, I got the feeling of a bad feeling between the 2 councils. And I mean that to you being recording this tonight, but I'm a little bit concerned that if we put pressure on, then North Devon might say, well, we should have more seats than Torridge. And I would be a bit nervous by putting too much pressure on North Devon for them to change their policy when I was substitute and they were so strongly in favour of the partial plan. And I wonder what strategies our leadership, and I'm not on the Joint Planning Committee any longer, but I do have real feelings that this could break difficulty if we try to enforce what we want against the wishes of what North Devon want. I wonder if our leaders could tell us how they plan to challenge that.
I'm quite happy to answer. You are on the committee as a substitute. It's just you're not going to be available for a few weeks, but you are one of the 2 substitutes.
I appreciate that.
Because I'm determined that we always get the right number. And the committee was set up as it was. It was set up by Sean Harrington. It's worked in some ways. It will work better as long as our members turn up and we get a proper vote. That's not been brought to me at all. I've had discussions with the new leader of North Devon. And as I said earlier, I think I'm quite happy I can work with the leader, Ian Room. And what he's saying to me is, how can I show that there is the benefit? Well, the sheer fact is, time is no running out. And when we made that initial decision, we would do, well, I never made it because I spoke against it and I voted against doing a partial review, and I've not changed my view. Unfortunately, it didn't go that way. That's democracy. But no, I feel we've got a chance now with new councils on both sides, with the changing circumstances. You know, we've got Devon Futures trying to drive forward skills and education. And some of you will know that Petrock would like to go to university over the next 10 years. This is an opportunity for our young people. This is you've got to go away and earn a job, get an education, get a good job, and come back when you can afford to live here. Those days are gone, or they should be gone, and it's our job to make sure they're gone. Is that we need to be saying to our young people, stay in the area. You can get a first-class education in Petrock. They are aiming their degrees at the stuff we're providing, like the Marine Centre and the Innovation Centre. And then we've got the Skills Board that's working separate to Torridge, but includes some of Torridge, really looking at how we can develop skills and employ people. And we've got this Levelling Up partnership, which hopefully will give us a considerable amount of money to actually lift the area, you know, and I'm afraid if we end up with some proposals and we're told it doesn't fit the existing local plan, I'm not going to be happy, and I would expect all of our members not to be happy. That this is a chance, you know, it's been described as a chance in a lifetime and all that sort of stuff. We will know when we get there at the end, but the first thing is make sure we got a local plan that will enable us to deliver all these options. Make sure it's a local plan that actually takes into consideration what our communities want, rather than necessarily this power down that, you know, we're being told we're getting a new policy or whatever it's called, a new direction on some of the local plan, on the planning stuff, on the the MPPF. We were told we were going to get it in the spring. Well, look outside, it feels like the winter now, and we're still waiting for some of it. So be on the front foot, be positive, get this back to JPPC, make sure we got 7 votes and say, this is a great opportunity for Northern Devon, not just for Torridge, but the other things that go around it will benefit the whole of Northern Devon. And let's just get on with the job. I'm afraid I can't be doing with this tinkering. Really, I don't want to be tinkering. And I know I've been told not to use that word, but that's how it feels.
Thank you.
I answered you somewhere along the line, Councillor.
Yeah, if you give me a line answer, leader. Thank you very much.
Well, Councillor, it's been proposed by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Locke, I believe. That was a long time ago. Councillor Harding, rather. It was a long time ago. So let's have a show of hands. All in support.
We've got to find a recommendation.
Well, the recommendation is that we go for a comprehensive new local plan. Correct?
Okay, sorry, I've got it on the computer. Yeah.
Okay, all in favour, please show.
Yeah.
Should we like this to be unanimous?
We give us North Devon can.
They'd be on the phone in the morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dan. Well done. Yes, thank you both. That's a very good one. Thank you very much. Item 11, housing provision, Central Lands Review, pages 62 to 71. Give the gap exactly is going to present the report.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a number of slides to run through. I thought it would be a lot easier if we've got quite a few new members who may not be up to speed with some of the work that was done during the past council to get to where we are today. So I've got the report in my name and the leader's name. It has been a team effort. So we've got John and Adrian here who I may call on for a little bit of support depending on the questions, and obviously Sean and Helen put work into it as well. So as we said, the reports and the background on pages 62 to 64, it really identifies a number of the steps that the council's gone through since this project was started. It really stems back to your last strategic plan, which was approved back in October, or the previous council's last strategic plan, I should say, approved back in October 2020. When councillors recognised that housing was an area of concern, with prices increasing, lack of availability, temporary accommodation, etc., being a problem. So what was decided was we'd run some workshops for all councillors to attend, and that was supported by a consultancy company called ARC, who facilitated those meetings with the kind of wider housing expertise that the council didn't have following the transfer of our housing stock some years ago. So we took an options report to full council in November 21, where all councillors in attendance unanimously agreed a number of points to review. Things around viability assessments in the planning process, undertaking a review of the council-owned land and buildings, and to score them with an assessment tool to determine whether they had potential to develop housing on them. That's not to say we were going to develop housing on them, and I'll come back to that shortly. And seek any funding opportunities to assist with the delivery, either through the land relief fund for brownfield sites or through Homes England. That was then to be followed up with a strategic session looking at some of those results, particularly from the assessment, and start to deliver or develop a delivery plan. We had a number of further workshops looking at a range of sites, and our previous property manager is responsible for pulling together that initial trawl of the council's asset list. Then with input from the property team, planning team, and the rest of the management team, we developed 12 sites that were initially presented to full council back in July 2022. And those sites included an external viability and cost assessment, still with the overarching principle that they had potential for housing development rather than they would be developed for housing. So following that, then in October of that year, 11 of the 12 sites were approved to take forward into more detailed business cases, outlining further whether or not they have potential for housing. Next slide. So during that period, and what was going on, we still had COVID pandemic restrictions, particularly at the start of that process. We had a number of campaigns running to stop the projects, to stop work on some of the sites. We have had an election period back in May this year. There's a significant upsurge in our temporary accommodation. The number of people presenting to the council at risk and actually in homelessness, and the cost of that were escalated significantly towards 1.2 million in terms of temporary accommodation. We had the Russian invasion of Ukraine, so we had refugee and asylum widen from the existing Afghan schemes. So there had to be an element of some focus shift. We needed to be dealing with what was not now an emergent problem, but a real live situation. So during the period, the beginning of this calendar year and across the election period, we submitted bids and applications for Brownfield Land Release Fund. During last year, we acquired Sally House, which I think which direction is just down the road there, not far away, to convert into hostel accommodation. Hostel accommodation being by far the more financially viability use of buildings. We received some grant funding to secure and deliver on site 3 modular units at Sally House, and they were put in situ just before the end of this calendar year. Discussions with the department levelling up homes and communities. Negotiations continued around a project with Rough Sleeper Accommodation Programme, with residents part funding that scheme. Well, that changed dramatically during the period, with residents pulling out, leaving the council to further negotiate with a change to that programme, and that's been now almost secured. We had the launch of 2 local authority housing funds linked to the refugee and the asylum dispersal, particularly coming from Afghan. So whilst we've taken up the first fund, LAHF1, because of capacity and timing issues, we haven't been able to take up the second scheme. So, as I said, we've adapted our current focus. So it's been tailored around co-designing solutions to dealing with our temporary accommodation demand and to manage and accommodate and secure the government housing related funding allocations. And they have specific types of conditions around the types of accommodation, the use of accommodation, and the time frames. To the types of accommodation on the Local Authority Housing Fund 1, we have to provide a 4-bed property for Afghan resettlement. The use of the accommodation is for that in the first instance, but if there isn't a call on that, then the units can be used to manage our own internal temporary accommodation. The timeframes have been particularly constraining, so the hope is that we're aiming for a November 23 delivery, but we've been given an extension, a backstop date of March 24, but that's still quite a tight time frame. So we've been concentrating on land in our own ownership, mainly because of cost. If we've got land in our own ownership, it's easier to control and deliver than try and acquire sites, as many members will know from some of the other projects we've been trying to deliver, and particularly around delivery capacity. And it also then meets the objectives of the full council decision, looking at our own land holdings specifically. On top of that, then, rather than purchasing stock on the open market, it does increase the stock of available housing within the district. So you haven't got 11 business cases in front of you. Obviously, it's been quite an effort to get to where we are today, and I'll come back to the specifics of the recommendation. But what we've gone on to do is categorise the 11 sites that were initially put forward to try and rationalise them into a proper delivery plan. So you'll see we've highlighted in green those sites which we would propose delivering in the first instance, those identified as being able to be progressed relatively quickly. So that's Pines Lane. So the Bayview garages just off Pines Lane, present in Langtree, Packers Park, Bradworthy, Gackets Lane, Northern, and Clevewood. So all of those are considered best deliverable within the shortest space of time. So that's what we target as phase 1. Then we've got 2 sites highlighted in amber. That's Windmill Lane in Northern and Ethel Brown Close in Bideford. So they considered with potential, but need more significant design development and due diligence before they can be progressed any further. So we identified those as our phase 2. Then we've got a number of sites in red. Those sites unlikely to be developed or not in the medium term. So they are Bonehill Car Park in Northern, part of South Street Car Park in Thornton, Cliveden Road, Bideford, and Springfield Car Park, Bideford. So they are much more complicated to deliver for a variety of reasons, and they are outlined in the report. So the recommendation for those red sites is to remove them from the programme. So what the proposals are is looking at the 2 sources of external funding that have been made available to us through the rough sleeper accommodation programme and the Local Authority Housing Fund 1, which is around 980,000 of external grant. As I mentioned earlier, they're both time restricted with an early date of November 23, but our head of legal and governance has been liaising with the department, and they are of a view that that can be extended to March 2024. As mentioned, they both have grant conditions around their use, so specifically what they can be used for. Both require match funding from the council of 1.3 million, so it's 50% funded, match funding for the rough sleeper accommodation programme and 60% match funding for the Local Authority Housing Fund programme. What we've been trying to target is identifying funding that doesn't need the council to enter and increase its borrowing permission. And that detail is identified on page 66 of your report. So overall, that would provide an additional 10 units of accommodation. And as mentioned earlier, if that is not needed for housing Afghan visitors, then it can be used for our own temporary accommodation use. So as I mentioned earlier, just to bring some of the new members up to speed, so Sally House was acquired during the last council. We already cited 3 modular units at the site, and there's planning already in place for a further 3 units to redevelop the property. And the property is currently under redevelopment and refurbishment and should be available for occupation during the autumn. The Pines Lane site, we've identified that there's potential for positioning 6 further modular units on that site. And as I said earlier, we're seeking to acquire a 4-bedroom property, which is required as part of the grant conditions. For this option or range of options, we see as the best chance of delivering these schemes within the time frames that are stipulated. And you'll note from the report there's ward member support for that particular site in Pines Lane. So there's 8 recommendations in the report. So starting for us officers to focus on the 5 sites highlighted in green, phase 1, to continue to look at the amber rated sites as phase 2 once we've completed phase 1, not to progress with the sites ranked and assessed in red in the report, approve submission of planning application for modular units on the Pines Lane site, approve the submission of planning application for siting and modular units for any of the other sites in the list green, with the exception of Clevewood, which already has outline planning permission, and supplementary capital receipts have already been factored in to help part fund the waste and refuse site, should I say, rather than the environment centre. So then going on to provide 6 temporary accommodation modular units by match funding the £500,000 contribution from the department, including an additional 5% contingency, so taking the cost up to just over £1 million, and the council's contributions being funded from the reserves identified in the report. Accept the grant from the Local Authority Housing Fund with supplementary match funding, again with a small contingency, taking the cost to 1.26 million. Again, funding identified from reserves within the report. And finally, to add the total of that to the capital programme, so 2.3 million for all those units, and to acquire a 4-bed property purchase from the local market. Yeah, happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Councillor Brenton.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd like to move a recommendation on page 68, isn't it? Yeah. And to say that really, the Chief Executive talked about a workshop we had some time ago, didn't we, when we looked at all these sites. And the workshop consisted of, ward members who knew what they're talking about. And we identified what were the goers and what were the losers. And unfortunately, when it went to full council decided they'd look at all of them. And of course, didn't that throw a grenade in the works? Eh? My God. Well, I don't know, it's been a highlight Torrington, hasn't it? Where I mean, there was never a starter. Same with Cleveland Road, it never was a starter. It should never have gone forward in any shape or form. Now it's under the proposal, it's going to be ditched, thank goodness, and it stayed that way, I hope. But it brings us back to the other issue about housing generally. And there's been a lot of programs on Radio 4, I mean, people listen to that, but one of the best was a Sunday afternoon, we were driving back from our grandparent duties. Now, an obscure time, 3:30 on a Sunday afternoon, who's listening to Radio 4 there, but never mind. But it was a really good debate, chaired by Michelle Hussein, the presenter on BBC. And the general consensus was that our planning is broke. It's not fit for purpose. It is not doing what it's supposed to do. And I welcome the previous decision made by this council that we're going to do a comprehensive new review, because hopefully we'll be ahead of the game and actually putting in stuff that works for our communities. We're not doing it. These projects are all very well, but they're a drop in the ocean. They're not doing what we should be really doing it in providing housing, for decent housing for people. We're already giving planning consents for housing that's going to need upgrading in less than 10 years' time, because it's rubbish in terms of its insulation, etc., for the environment. So, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, but that does depend a bit on a partnership between us and central government. But we're on the ground here. We know what we need in our communities. We have a desire for affordable rental accommodation. It is unfortunate that the next generation will never get, never get on the housing ladder. It's going to be forever before they get there. In the meantime, they'll be bringing up their families in rented accommodation. So we should be providing that decent rented accommodation. We used to do it decades ago. We did. I was brought up on a council site part of my time. I have to say, initially, first 10 years of our life as a family, we lived in a hovel. It was literally a hovel. It was a high cottage with no amenities whatsoever. I think some people today would think, well, I'll take that. We had a roof, but we had a roof. That was about it. So we do need to tackle this problem, and we need to get our shortcomings relayed up the line. We're on the ground. We should be telling the LGA, the government, this is what we need in our communities. Help us provide it, because we got the will to do it. We just need the resources to follow it up. But this is a start. Let's not knock it. It's a start.
Thank you. Councillor Christie.
Yes, can I just ask a question? The 4-bedroom house, are our officers looking to buy a new one, or are we going to buy one that needs work? Because that will cost more.
Adrian's probably the best. So we're not, it's got to meet certain conditions. So we don't want to buy a dilapidated property cheap that costs a fortune to develop. It's looking for the right property, the right price. Can
I just ask, have our officers looked at any properties yet? Which town are we talking about? I presume it's not in a village.
Adrian, yes, if you would, please. Briefly, if you could.
Yes, I'll keep it very brief. Yes, we have looked at some properties in and around the Bideford area specifically to meet the grant requirements that are stipulated for a 4-bedroom property, and we've obviously been looking at property that is available on the market without excessive work and that also has reasonably environmental standards and low running costs for the end users.
Thank you. Councillor Cottle Hunker, I believe you were first, and who else? Someone else had the hand up? Councillor Locke.
Yeah, just you've lumped the top 5 green sites together, but you've only asked for ward member views for Pines Lane. So I feel like you should have asked the ward member views for all of the 5 that are in the green. We haven't, as a ward member for the other sites, we haven't had that opportunity. But for our views,
we haven't developed a project for the other sites other than Clevewood yet, so they're in that category as deliverable, but we'll have to prepare further details and report back because we're only identifying that one site currently, so we'd need to bring another report back to council on the others once that project's been developed, and at that point ward member views would be sought and included.
so is it just the Pines Lane that will go forward if it's focused on, and the other 4 would have to come back to council?
With the exception of Clevewood, because that's already been identified previously, so there's outline planning consent for that site, and as I mentioned, the council's financial plan needs a receipt from that site of 1.1 million.
Councillor Locke.
Yeah, with regard to the 4 modular pods that were already in situ at Sunny House, have they been fully occupied?
Not yet, because there's work ongoing on the building, and they sited very close to the building, so it wasn't. Adrian will probably better answer more. It's not safe to be doing the extent of work on site with those modular units. Have those modular units occupied at this time, but they are ready to be occupied as soon as the work's completed.
And they are very nice, and I'd recommend any councillor when you get the opportunity, just call in and have a look at them. Councillor Lavelle, haven't you?
Just with regard to some of those sites, it says legislation requires an innovative thought or whatever, and I have mentioned this to other councillors before, but with accommodation on car parks in Bristol, they have these really nice units. There's one next to St George's Park in Bristol where they put these modular, well, I don't know what they're, these flats on stilts in car parks where you don't lose all the car parking and you have really nice accommodation. So they would have a car park underneath, but it's also still an operating car park. It's just, I'm just mentioning that because you said it needs an innovative idea, and I just suggest that maybe things like that could be looked at, because I don't know what they cost, but obviously you can ask the stuff council if they're all looking at one. I know it was in they were featured as a big issue a time ago, whatever, so that
Yeah, you're right, Councillor Lavelle. So that's one thing we had looked at, but not gone into that amount of detail. I happened to be in Bristol recently and visited the site in the park, so you know that it is a possibility, but we haven't explored that in detail yet. But it's certainly a possibility.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to express a public sigh of relief on behalf of Great Torrington. I think you woke a sleeping giant there. And I think it was interesting that somebody was talking about hand grenades and the Civil War. It wasn't quite that bad, but I'd just like to say thank you, and people can sleep comfortably in their beds tonight.
Councillor Ames.
Thank you to the officers for all the hard work they've done on this project. Let me just ask what the next stage is. I think is it supposed to be a strategic session with councillors, and when will that be? If that's the next stage.
The next stage is, assuming whole council approves it tonight, is deliver this phase one scheme, then look at the other scheme, the other projects in that green section with a view of bringing reports back to members to consider those. We're not proposing having another workshop at this stage. You've got your strategic planning workshop coming up in 2 weeks' time. That's the opportunity to re-emphasise what you may wish to do around housing, and assuming, as I would expect, that to be still one of your main themes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hope having set a strategic plan saying we want to go into the housing market or what we're doing, that this process is going to carry on. But I'm just trying to establish when we'll be invited to consider the next process, really. And what have you got a target date for doing it? Because it's supposed to be a housing crisis emergency, isn't it?
I'm sorry, Councillor Hayden. No, I'm not entirely clear what you're aiming.
You're going to investigate these sites in more detail and come up with further details, and talk about deliverability, how you've engaged with housing associations, etc. At what point, is there some point where we'll be presented with all this and make a decision, and when will that be?
I haven't got a specific time frame around that. Following tonight, the officer team will meet again, and we've got to bear in mind the level of capacity. So all of this work tends to be centred around a small team. So Adrian kind of leading from the project side of things, as well as doing a vast amount of work on the Clean Maritime Centre, plus the waste centre. We've got to think about capacity as well. So we need to deliver these sites, then move on to the other. It doesn't mean we won't be doing anything in the background, but if we don't get these delivered within the time frame, we'll lose the funding.
Councillor Conhock, shall we Councillor Bright first? Otherwise I will get shouted out.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad the South Street car park's been pretty pro in the bid and acknowledged in this report. It does state there that it is the most controversial site, and that is because Brighton spoke up and made it known. It does not say that for Northern, which I think is probably the same scenario, but they were not as vocal. You know, there is a lot of opposition to that site of the car park being used, and well, because trying to make the bracket, you pay attention. Northern, not quite so much.
Councillor Conhock. It's all right, I think it's finished. I think you made your point, sat down.
Why, adding 2.3 million for capital program, wasn't our budget also looking at a 1.4 million deficit? How did you add the maths up for that? Well, I really want to know.
You'll have seen a report that went to Community Resources 2 weeks ago, which identified the surplus that was generated last financial year. So part of that funding has been allocated to this project. It's highlighted in the report where the funding is coming from.
Obviously, our budget was a lot of the emphasis was on that we're really going to be hitting deficit hard and we need to make adjustments. And now it's got quite a lot of money available that didn't sound like it was before.
Well, in the report that was presented to Community Resources, it identified there was a significant sum of additional grant income that came from the government during the latter part of the year. Planning income was up during the latter part of the year. Car park income was up during the latter part of the year. And absolutely, Newton obviously read the report. Interest rates have gone through the roof, which greatly increased the amount of income the council has. That's also will be the case for 2023-24, particularly in terms of interest rates as they've continued to increase. So that's kind of generally why we've got more money available. Clearly, we couldn't foresee interest rates going from just above 0% to over 5% or likely to be even higher this Thursday.
Councillor Connor-Hunkin, another Taunton perspective, is it?
No, I'd actually like to add a recommendation to the long list. That the council put out a request to landowners to come forward with potential land for community land trusts to be put into action. So I think we might have more suitable locations come forward that way. And I know Councillor James, the leader, is very passionate about community land trusts. So I'd like to add that as a recommendation, please.
You probably need to notice a motion possibly for CNR, probably, or the school council. Is that correct?
Well, obviously, Councillor Connor-Hunkin is able to make an amendment. The proposals being, the recommendations in the report have been proposed but not seconded as yet. But Councillor Connor-Hunkin's proposing an amendment.
I'm happy to.
Sorry.
It's been proposed and it's been seconded. Sorry, would you like to just rephrase that because I've forgotten it already? Just say it again, please.
So recommendation number, is it number 9?
It would be number 9.
That the council puts out a request to landowners to come forward with potential land or community land trusts to be put into action. Yeah, that's it.
Consideration.
For consideration, because I think there might be more suitable locations.
Yeah, I will do. Okay, we'll get the vote on the amendment, but Councillor Connor-Hunkin's amendment is addendum, or is included then. Sorry, Councillor Bright.
Recommendation E in the report. So approve the submission of a planning application for the siting modular units for any of the other sites, sorry, there's a typing mistake, as authorised in A, with the exception of Fleetwood, which have outward planning permission and a receipt included in the FCFP, should funding come available. So that's saying we're approving the submission planning for siting modular units to any other site in the plan, in Plan A, that's shown in the pack. So Clevewood, is Clevewood on that plan?
Clevewood's already got outline planning permission, so that wouldn't need any further planning permission. I don't think that's Clevewood on the.
No, it's not. That's what I'm saying. I just don't know what the recommendation says. Approve the submission of a planning application for the siting of modular units for any other site as authorised in A, with the exception of Clevewood. So are you saying with this new permission?
All these sites highlighted in green.
So that's not A, that's the table above in the report. So E is saying that if we approve the recommendation, you can submit a planning application for any of the green sites. Is that what recommendation?
Yes.
That seems quite strong to me. I think that you know, if we haven't even got ward member views on the 4 of those 5 sites, I think for us to say now in this meeting, if we give you permission to get planning permission on those sites is too strong. And I think that recommendation should be altered to say that we're okay with you progressing with Pines Lane, which you have sought ward members for use for already, but we're not happy with you going ahead with the other 4 green sites because we haven't even asked ward members, as far as I know, their views.
Lack of information. I thought right at the early stage of this process, board members were invited for their views on the sites. Is that not okay?
I think board members' views have been sought on all of the sites, but not specifically with a planning application in mind.
But we've got a new council since those board members' views.
Well, I mean, as I see it now, the Pines Lane site and the Clevewood sites are the 2 that will be progressed. as soon as possible then. All the other ones that are in the green box, as soon as a suitable plan is put forward with a recommendation of council with board member consent, it'll come back to this council for approval.
Yeah, so submitting a planning application still doesn't necessarily mean you develop the sites.
No, oh, sure.
And as I think you mentioned, ward member views had been sought, and that was a decision of a previous council, I accept, but that's still a council decision that's been made. So as I said, we bring a business case back, and I suspect, to be honest, they would probably run in parallel anyway, because once we develop proposals, it's at that point obviously that you start considering the planning aspects and the submission of a planning application, because ultimately you still want to know if it's suitable and possible in planning terms before you progress too far.
Yeah. Councillor Andrews?
It's just that you said that
sorry,
what opinion had been asked for, but not for planning. But this is planning. So how could you ask their opinion without saying it's planning?
I think board member views were sought in principle, but when there is an actual plan put forward, or that is proposed to put forward, to actually get planning on it, obviously board members will be consulted again for their opinion. Councillor Bright?
Yeah, back again. Yeah, I would just remind, well, informed, I suppose, there were members who weren't here previous, but on the previous report, board members weren't asked their comments, they were put there and published there, and the rest of the council ignored some of those comments to make sure they pushed things through.
Okay. I'm sorry, Person Newton, you want to speak?
Very briefly, Chair, concerning the proposed amendment, and laudable that this council should be encouraging landowners to consider providing land for community land trusts. I think if it's part of this, it complicates the issue, because a community land trust would actually invariably be involving other styles of finance, private finance even. This is specific to do with council finance, and therefore I applaud the idea, but I would have thought it should be the subject of a specific standalone notice of motion or whatever, rather than trying to put it in here. Because
well, that was my thoughts on it, but it's been proposed and it's been seconded, I understand. Yeah.
On the basis, I do agree with Councillor Newton. I think what we need to, sorry, I sit on the, whatever it is, the Devon Housing Task Force, and there is a move to bring in more community land trusts. And I think I agree with Cheryl, we should be doing more. I've been doing it for 20 years. And I think we probably need a way of bringing that forward specifically, rather than complicating it in with what is our policy to deliver. I'm happy to support a notice of motion or something of a way to bring it forward. But I think let's deal with this and get this one out of the way, if that's okay. So I'll withdraw that.
Okay, you will need to go to the vote on the amendment, because it has been proposed and seconded. I think Tom.
Yeah, it was proposed by Councillor Cole, and seconded by Councillor Andy Brenton.
Yeah.
To include the community.
Yeah. To include that, then community land trust. So we'd take that vote first.
With the support of Councillor James, I'll withdraw that, bring it forward and do it properly.
Thank you. Okay, in that case.
All of the secondary.
Thank you. Well, okay, before we just go to the vote, just as a matter of clarification, Chief Executive, for anyone listening on YouTube who lives in the Highview area, you did mention the word Highview. When you talked about the Pines Lane garages, it says in the report Highview in brackets. Now, my understanding is those are two totally separate areas, and Highview is, I think, it's a mistake.
Our project manager shaking his head. So is it Highview off Pines Lane?
Well, the garages at Pines Lane that I was involved in the discussion originally. The Pines Inn off of Grenville Estate. There's a fairly large block of garages with two rows of garages, quite a number of them. Those are the ones that we were talking about.
Chair, there is a plan attached as an appendix to the agenda on page 71.
Oh, in behind.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon, it is Highview. I stand corrected. I didn't realise that we own a plot of land in behind those garages.
I will read the report.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Harding. So I believe it's already been proposed. Who proposed it? Councillor James, you proposed it? Okay. Councillor Brenton proposed it.
We require a second.
Good. And it was seconded by?
We haven't got a second.
Councillor Simon Inch, the second. All in favour, please show. Against? Anyone against? And abstentions?
So it's 29 for and 2 abstentions.
Okay. Moving on into item 12 on your agenda, to answer questions submitted under procedural rule A9. 2 questions have been received.
Yeah, it's 3 questions.
3 questions, rather. And the first one is from Councillor Lavelle. Councillor Lavelle, would you can ask a supplementary if you wish to.
Thank you. I just feel, just in response to that answer, I just feel that our councillor grants aren't designed or designated or I never imagined in my life that they were supposed to be used to accept the local charges and something income. I thought it was very more charitable, so I'm showing that part of the answer a little bit, whatever. Can I read this out? I don't know how it works, but anyway.
Just to stop the man. I mean,
okay.
You've got a written one and you've got the answer.
It's raising my initial question, the council response. Another situation has arisen detrimentally affecting the very popular Appledore Book Festival, which brings in a huge influx of people into the area annually. It's recently been brought to my attention that as a result of Torridge District Council handing over control of Appledore Quay to Devon County Council, the use of the quay for events associated with the Appledore Book Festival, in particular the Free Family Fun Day, can't be licensed as Appledore Quay is now Devon.
Councillor Lavelle, you're only meant to be asking, a question.
Okay, well, I'm
not making a statement.
Sorry?
You're not meant to be making a statement.
Okay, so it's happening to Appledore. There's a suggestion, because Appledore Quay is now designated as a highway, the suggestion is that we use the car park for the Free Family Fun Day, which again would bring this same problem of the cost of car parking fees. Local traders are giving their time and their money to make this free day possible for the kids. And again, these charitable events are getting hammered by the unexpected costs of the car park fees. And I would argue that you make plenty of money from car parking because these events pull in people to the town centre is being done. And I think it's an unnecessary thing to charge charities for the car parking anyway. Okay, that's what I feel.
Thank you.
Why? Yeah.
So the next question is from Councillor Thomas.
I would just ask if you actually understood my question, because the point I was making was not to do with the process, it was to do with the communication with councillors and the public The answer refers to what the council can't do, but I don't think it really relates to my question about whether the council should do better with actually communicating the situation with members and the public, so we can explain why the council can't do certain things and why it can do. And do you think maybe you should improve communication with councillors when situations like the Victoria Park one arise?
I think that's a good point, and I would probably support that. Okay, and the last question was Councillor Haynes.
Yeah, the first paragraph refers to the review of EV provision. May I ask that would come to the climate working group before it comes to CNR or whoever? It's news to me, that actually. And the other one, starting point has been to discuss with current EV providers about the reliability of EV points in our car parks. Well, it would be nice to know where those discussions got to, because I think the Labrador charging point's been out of action for about 2 years, from my understanding. So can I just ask, where are we with these discussions? Because it's not encouraging people to buy electric vehicles, and it's not helping our tourist economy if we've got these unreliable charging.
Thank you. I'll get Sean to answer that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So yes, of course, with the agreement of the Chair of the Climate Change Working Group, we can bring a report back there in due course. I think it would be unfair of me to start talking about the exact performance of this, because I don't have the statistics in front of me. But my discussions with Steve and the parking team have been that the problems with the charging units have been intermittent. They haven't actually been out of use all the time. They're in and out of use, although the app does say that they're often out of use. That is unacceptable. We have been discussing that with the company that leased the space and provide the units for us. And I think that'll all be wrapped up in the report that comes back that you'll see in due course.
Councillor Smith, yes.
Yeah. I'd just like to clarify, the charging points in Great Torrington were out of use for a very long time. Yeah. It wasn't intermittently, they were out for well over a year. Nothing was happening, so it was causing a major problem.
Yeah.
Because things were being, they were on a national database. People were coming expecting people to charge, and there was the other option. So the clarification is not just an intermittent, as is right.
Okay, thank you. Item 13, petitions. We've got 3 petitions have been received, and Chief Executive will run through these.
Thanks, Chair. Just got a couple of slides this time. So I guess members may be wondering why there's 3 petitions listed, all in relation to South Street car park. Obviously, the council operates a petition scheme, so a pack of petitions were handed in as is required. The team then review and look through what's been submitted. Clearly, those signing the petition need to be from within the district of Horwich. So when the petitions submitted were looked at, you'll see there's 2 with subtle differences. The first one ended with already granted or are imminent, and for whatever reason, unbeknown to us, the second petition went on and changed the words imminent to imminently and started suggesting or making suggestions that the South Street car park was or is a premium site, which is really quite different from the original petition. So when the team looked through them, so there was 1,741 signatures for petition 1, 1,376 signatures on petition 2, and 43 on petition 3. And petition 3 simply said save South Street car park. Obviously, there's a significant number, particularly from the online version, that were rejected. I think there were signatures from Mexico, South Africa, and a range of places, which clearly we were unable to accept. The petition scheme within the Constitution allows potential for them to be, or petitions to be amalgamated. But the two main petitions submitted do offer quite a different view. The second one talking about South Street Car Park being a premium site. So therefore, those who signed the first petition, we couldn't say accurately that they would sign the second one. So ultimately, we couldn't add them together. So taken separately, they don't go over the threshold. In addition to that, the opening sentence of the petition is talking about planning proposals, and clearly there's no planning proposals being submitted at this stage. As it refers to wider proposals, then we've got no proposals in place to debate the petition being it premature. And clearly the item 11 on tonight's agenda was the recommendation which was approved to not progress with the site anyway. Chair, so in that instance, we've just simply write back to the petition organiser.
Thank you, Steve. Well, either way, as a result, we're trying.
I just want to add, it is quite clear, they're all the same petition, everyone's signing it, decided for the same reason. So what the way you just put it, everyone knows it was the same petition to save South Street Car Park from having housing on it. And that's quite clear. I'm pretty sure that everyone understands that.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, I think it needs to be pointed out that, you know, just to just shrug off this petition so easily, you know, you have forgotten that you have actually offended everyone in Torrington because you've deliberately tried to sabotage their town. That is what you've done. That's why the petition exists.
She makes that hasn't done anything. All right, Councillor. Thank you. Okay, notices of motion is item 14. We have three notices of motion. He got me for back, man. One from Councillor Pennington and, well, one from us, two from myself, and one will be withdrawn. So, Councillor Pennington first.
Thank you, Chair. I will be brief. I think we should call ourselves Torrington District Council now after the situation is such that I've made a request for microphones, and I think our leader made a wonderful case for me tonight when he said I'll stand up and go to a microphone so I could be heard. And normally Ken sits over there. It's the first time I've heard you for 4 years, Ken, so I'm really grateful.
I will get you back, Councillor Pennington. Thank you very much.
2 points. I'll be brief. It's a yes or no vote. Save you a lot of time. Sometimes I can't hear what's said on that side of the room because we have a bit of a barrier here between the rooms, okay? And the sound bounces and goes back and forth, and it's very difficult. I'm also on Plans Committee. It's interesting on Plans Committee when I got a sad life because I do Plans Committee now, and I even go back and look at it a second time to see what I'm accused of saying, which is quite interesting. I'm always amazed how good the recordings are at Plans Committee. Councillor Newton says an awful lot of Plans Committee. He's been there every time representing Winkley, I think, for the last 3 months. So he's done a great job. You want to hear it. Then I come to Cadstown, and it's very difficult sometimes to hear what members say. And I've had it said to me, are members on the same parity as officers because officers have microphones to speak into when members' voices aren't put forward. And I'm really keen that we have microphones that record what members have to say, because members' views are vitally important, particularly new councillors as well, for the direction of this council. So I would like a proposition for our officer Tom Vanstone to work on something that puts a better microphone system in so that we can be heard at Cadstown on YouTube in the same way we can at the town hall. And that is what I'm asking you to vote on tonight. I call for a seconder, be quick about it, and we'll move on to the next proposal.
Councillor Hicks, I believe yours is first.
Certainly, I'll second Councillor Pennington. Being at the far end, I accept I'm in about the most difficult position. But I would also ask everyone
to remember who you're talking to. Too many of you have the habit of directing your conversation directly at the person at the microphone. The rest of the room is not listening to you. Some are nodding their heads and there's some of the words.
Thank you. Mr. Craig, I believe you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to just second the
Oh, yeah.
motion, but you know, a lot of it has been said. Some people do speak louder than others, and it's important that everyone does get heard and that everyone is able to hear what everyone else is saying.
It's been proposed. Second. So, yeah, but very, very briefly, Councillor Brandy, because it's coming up 10 to 9, and I don't want, no, not after that.
Problem is, I'm very sorry that you can't hear me over there. I do apologise for that. But problem easily solved. Let's get back to the town hall. This place is rubbish. You get members of the public sat over there who can't hear what people over here are saying, for example, and we can't see them and who they are. The town hall has got much better acoustics down there. Councillor Pender just said it with the planning. We wouldn't need this bother with the microphones. It's much better down there. And my wife just pointed out, eyesight, you can't see some of the stuff that's on the screens here because it's so far away. I do think we should go back to the town hall. That is where the public go to. That's what they recognise Torridge's main debating chamber is. What on earth we do is stick it up here. We're up here because of COVID. And that's all. That's good. Well, it hasn't gone, but it's diminished. So we could go back to the town hall. I hate it up here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, it's been proposed and seconded that we investigate a better microphone system for use by members. Quite how that's going to be achieved, I have no idea. Well, maybe a wandering mic or whatever. But anyway, it's been proposed and seconded. Who seconded it again?
Councillor Hicks.
Councillor Hicks, yeah. So show of hands in support, please. To investigate better microphone system. Against? Any abstentions?
20 for 2 against and 4 abstentions.
Thank you. Right, come on to the next rules of motion, which was for myself, that involves no more, mate. I'm not going to go into a lot of debate on this. I'm not going to go into any debate on it. What I am going to suggest is that we refer it to the climate working group for them to consider this on the grounds that I would ask them to take into consideration areas like Victoria Park, some of our more important town centre grass verges, roundabouts, etc., and also our cemeteries. I've had lots and lots of complaints from residents about the state of particularly Higher Cemetery, and I think it's very disrespectful when people go to their local cemetery and the grass is 2 feet tall. It is looked at, once again, Norwich doesn't care. So
Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, can I space them?
Well, I've been proposed, you'll get an opportunity, Councillor Haynes, when it comes to your climate group.
Previous one, people are allowed to speak, Chair.
It's 5 to 9. I don't have to go into extend the meeting. 3 hours. 3 hours. 3 hours. Very briefly then, please.
As standing, it's like sweeping my eyes around the room, as I've been told. I'm quite alarmed about this motion, particularly in the context of the decline in wildlife, 60% farm birds decline in this country, 80% decline in butterflies since the 1970s. We're one of the worst in Europe for wildlife. Councillor Bushby is suggesting that seemingly that we raise the grass to near the earth and not have any long grass areas. Most councils are now leaving areas of long grass in the public spaces, recognising that it's highly important for wildlife. We have an obligation as a council under legislation to promote biodiversity. We have declared a climate emergency. We have subscribed to a nature recovery plan with the biosphere, and we have a carbon and biodiversity plan. So I am alarmed by this suggestion, but certainly we welcome talking about it at Climate Group. I should tell everybody that the biodiversity plan is being prepared by the Estates Department, which is drawing up plans for areas where we could leave areas longer. I appreciate that there is a public concern over perceptions of tidiness. As you will see from other authorities up and down the country, they set off long areas of grass with mown areas of margin areas, and this makes it more acceptable. A plan is being drawn up at the working group, and we look forward to presenting it to what probably CNR.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that brief summary. Okay, well, we don't need any more debate on this. I mean,
of equality.
How briefly can you be, Councillor?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I was really relieved to see all the horrible wildflowers and the elegant range of grasses being trimmed to heaven knows what by the town council workmen at Little America, because we do need our lay-bys to be trimmed like their crew cuts. But really, the boot's on the other foot, isn't it? Councillor Goodsbury, you've got it all wrong. It's the state of the town that is awful. It's the streets. They're public space as well. And they're in a dire state in Bideford. The buildings are in a dire state. That's what we need to look at. Not, I totally agree with what Councillor Haynes says, not the small areas that have grass and wildflowers. I haven't heard anybody complain about that, but I have heard them complain about the awful state of the streets, the litter from the seagulls attacking the plastic bag. We only get done once a fortnight. That's the real issue of public spaces in our towns, particularly in Bideford, but also Torrington, because I've seen it there. That's what people really care about and what they're really concerned about, not beautiful wildflowers and the lovely different range of grasses that occasionally pop themselves up in our public spaces.
Thank you. Councillor Christie has an invitation.
Yes, on the town council, I put a motion to them to set up a tidy town group. It's going to be a joint one with Torridge. I invite you to join, Councillor Brendan.
Thank you. Right, it's been proposed, and it's been seconded. So can I have a show of hands to agree this motion to go to the Climate Working Group to consider not cutting various areas. Against? Abstentions. It's very. The numbers add up. Right, show again that all those in support of the motion.
Motion is to send it to the
Climate Working Group for their consideration. Against? And abstentions? Councillor Lavelle, did you have your hand up at some point?
Sorry.
You're voting for or against? For. No, that doesn't work.
You abstain. No, that's what it is.
Yeah, abstain, but didn't put his hand up. All right.
17.
That work up? Work it now? Huh? Come on, people, it's not that difficult. Once again, all those in favour of the motion, please show. Clearly, put your hand up. Against? Abstentions.
Yeah, yes, Chairperson, 18 for, 7 against, 6 abstentions.
Clearly carried. Right, my.
That's your fault, Chairman. You should have.
My second notice of motion, has, well, I can withdraw it because the works that I was asking on the notice of motion have been largely carried out by our officers, and I commend them for it. Thank you.
Point of order, Chair. I think you find under our constitution that you have to have a second bit of that. You can withdraw legislation.
Right, doesn't really matter. Would you like the second?
Well, you can't have Right.
Yeah, second.
Member may only withdraw.
No, I didn't need to get a second. I didn't get a second because I didn't move the motion. So the meeting ends at 1 minute past 9. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.